It started with a phone call. My husband, Tom, had just finished mowing the lawn when his phone buzzed. I was in the kitchen, hands covered in flour, trying to make my mother's old chicken pot pie recipe from scratch. Something about the smell of thyme and butter always calmed me. I heard his tone shift mid-conversation, curious at first, then a touch reluctant, and finally resigned. When he walked back inside, wiping sweat from his forehead with the bottom of his shirt, he looked at me with that sheepish grin he always wears when he's about to ask for something he knows I won't like. "Rachel," he said, dragging out the word like he did when we first started dating. "You remember my cousin Jake, right?" I froze mid-stir. Jake. Of course, I remembered Jake. He was the golden boy of Tom's family, charming, always traveling somewhere exotic, full of stories that made everyone laugh around the table. We'd only met a few times at reunions over the years, but there was something about him, an energy, maybe, that had stayed with me longer than I cared to admit. He was Tom's younger cousin by 10 years, and even back then, I'd noticed how the women, young and old, gravitated toward him like moths to a flame. "He needs a place to stay for a few weeks," Tom continued. "Job relocation. He got transferred to the city, but his apartment won't be ready until the 1st of next month." I placed the spoon down gently. "And we're the hotel." Tom gave a small shrug, guilt mixing with a hint of hope. "He's family." "Of course," I said yes. Jake arrived 2 days later, suitcase in one hand, garment bag in the other, and that familiar boyish grin on his face. The years had been good to him. Too good, if I'm being honest. His hair was a little longer than I remembered, tousled in a way that looked both careless and intentional. His stubble had just enough gray to make him look distinguished, and his voice, deeper now, carried the kind of calm confidence that comes from having lived a life full of experiences. "Rachel," he said, giving me a quick hug that lingered just a second too long. "You haven't aged a day." I laughed, brushing the compliment aside, but something about the way he looked at me made my skin prickle. It wasn't uncomfortable, not exactly, just unfamiliar. I was used to being invisible in a way, at least to men. After 2 decades of marriage, I'd fallen into a rhythm, a role. Wife, mother, hostess. But Jake's gaze didn't see any of that. He saw me. The first few days were uneventful. Jake was a considerate guest, clean, helpful, and polite. He offered to cook dinner one night and surprised us both with a spicy shrimp pasta that had Tom practically licking the plate. We drank a little wine afterward, and I found myself laughing more than I had in months. That night, after Tom went to bed early with a headache, Jake and I sat out on the back porch under the warm glow of the string lights I'd put up last fall. The cicadas hummed in the distance, and the air smelled like honeysuckle and cut grass. "It's beautiful here," Jake said, taking a sip from his glass. "Peaceful. Like the kind of place you'd never want to leave." I looked out at the yard, where Tom had just planted new rose bushes. "It is," I replied, "but peaceful can start to feel like quiet. And quiet sometimes feels like loneliness." I didn't know why I said that. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the way Jake was watching me, not just listening, but hearing me. He didn't say anything right away, just nodded slowly, as if he understood something unspoken. "You ever feel like there's a version of yourself you left behind?" he asked. I turned to look at him. The question hit harder than I expected. "Every day," I whispered. Over the next week, the rhythm of the house shifted subtly. I found myself looking forward to our late-night talks on the porch. They were innocent, of course, just conversations. But in those quiet hours, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. Jake asked about my art, something even Tom rarely brought up anymore. He wanted to see my old paintings, the ones collecting dust in the garage. When I showed them to him, he studied each canvas like it was something sacred. "These are incredible, Rachel," he said, holding up a piece I'd done years ago during a particularly hard winter. "Why did you stop?" I looked away. Life, kids, work, time. I guess I just forgot that part of me. He placed the painting down gently, his voice low. "Maybe it's time to remember." Then came the night of the storm. Tom had gone on a weekend fishing trip with his old high school buddies. Jake and I were alone in the house when the sky cracked open with thunder and rain lashed against the windows like something alive. The power flickered, then went out. We lit candles. I pulled out old board games. We played Scrabble by candlelight at the kitchen table, the storm roaring around us. "I haven't done this since I was a kid," Jake said, grinning as he laid down the word urine. "Fancy," I teased, trying not to think too hard about the choice of word. As the night wore on, the mood shifted. The house felt smaller somehow, the air thicker. I could feel his eyes on me, curious, warm, patient. And I realized that I wasn't afraid of being seen anymore. When I stood to blow out the candles, I felt his hand brush mine. Just a touch. Barely there, but it stopped me. I turned to look at him. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something I hadn't seen in years. Admiration, longing, respect. "I should go to bed," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. "Good night, Rachel." But as I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest, I knew something had shifted. Something I couldn't quite name yet. But I would. I didn't sleep well that night. The storm had passed, but its echo seemed to settle in my chest. I lay there in the dark, the soft creak of the old house playing tricks on my ears. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way Jake had looked at me, steady, searching, as if he already knew what I hadn't been willing to admit. I wasn't afraid of him. That wasn't it. I was afraid of myself. The next morning, the air was still damp, and the world outside the windows looked scrubbed clean. Birds chirped loudly, and the smell of wet earth lingered. I padded downstairs in my robe, my hair still a mess from tossing and turning. Jake was already in the kitchen, barefoot, shirt slightly wrinkled, flipping pancakes with a calm smile. "Morning, sleepyhead," he said, his voice warm and light. I tried to smile back, but something in me felt off-kilter. "You cook too." He shrugged. "When the mood strikes. Figured you could use a break." He poured me a cup of coffee exactly how I liked it, 2 sugars, splash of cream, without asking. That simple gesture, more than anything, caught me off guard. Tom had never once gotten it right, even after 20 years. We ate in relative silence, the kind that feels safe but charged. He told me a story about a project at his new job, how everything was moving faster than expected, how he might be able to move into his place earlier than planned. I should have felt relieved. But instead, I felt something dangerously close to disappointment. That afternoon, I decided to paint. For the first time in over a decade, I pulled out my easel from the garage. It was dusty and wobbly, but still standing. I set it up by the sunroom windows where the light was soft and golden. Jake walked in quietly and leaned in the doorway, not saying anything at first. I dipped my brush in deep blue and let it collide across the canvas. It was clumsy at first, hesitant. But then the motion returned to my wrist, the rhythm. I wasn't painting anything specific, just movement, emotion, memory. Jake eventually spoke. It suits you, seeing you like this." I glanced back at him, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. "Like what?" "Alive." The words settled between us like fog, thick and inescapable. That evening, I tried to keep my distance. I busied myself with laundry, with texts to the kids, with a long phone call to my sister. But when the house quieted again, and the sky began to darken, I found myself once more on the back porch. Jake joined me, 2 cups of chamomile tea in hand. We talked about regrets, about roads not taken, about how sometimes life pulls you in directions you never expected, and how easy it is to forget what you wanted in the first place. I used to dream about living by the sea, I confessed, opening a little art gallery. Nothing fancy, just something that was mine. Jake looked out toward the horizon, his expression unreadable. "Why didn't you?" I gave a half smile. "Because dreams don't fold laundry or cook dinner. They don't pay bills or raise kids." "No," he said softly. "But they keep you breathing." I don't remember how the conversation shifted, only that it did. Suddenly, we weren't talking about dreams anymore. We were talking about loneliness, about touch, about how long it had been since either of us had really felt anything that wasn't muted by obligation. "I'm not looking for trouble, Jake," I said, my voice tight with emotion. "I'm not offering any," he replied. And then he did the thing I didn't expect. He stood up and walked away. No pressure, no clever remarks, no boundary crossed. Just space. He left me with my thoughts, with the aching clarity that something in me had cracked open. And I wasn't sure I wanted to close it back up. The next day, Tom came home from his trip. He smelled like beer and fish and told the same tired stories he always told. I listened, nodded, laughed in all the right places. But I wasn't fully there. Not anymore. I watched Jake across the room, how he smiled, how he knew when to speak and when to stay quiet, how his eyes occasionally met mine with something unsaid but respectful. Later that night, as I climbed into bed beside Tom and turned off the lamp, I felt like I was floating in 2 lives at once. One that I had built over decades, solid and familiar, and another that had crept in over the course of days, uncertain, stirring, alive. I didn't know what was coming next, but I knew things would never be quite the same. The following week moved like slow water, quiet on the surface, but churning underneath. Jake kept his distance, not in a cold way. If anything, it was careful, deliberate. We were both walking an invisible line, and we knew it. We still shared meals, casual conversations, even the occasional smile when our paths crossed in the hallway, but the air between us had changed. Tom, oblivious as always, carried on as if nothing was different. He talked about work, griped about traffic, and spent his evenings watching reruns of old detective shows with the volume just a little too loud. I tried to match his energy, to settle back into the rhythm we'd spent years building. But my mind kept drifting. To Jake's voice, to the way he looked at me without expectation, to the version of myself I had rediscovered in his presence. It was late on a Tuesday when the silence finally cracked. Tom had gone to bed early again. He'd been tired lately, or maybe just uninterested. I stayed downstairs, curled up in the armchair with a book I wasn't really reading. I heard Jake in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner, the gentle clink of dishes and running water, the only sound in the house. I don't know what made me stand up and walk in there. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the part of me that missed being seen. He was rinsing the last plate when I spoke. "You'll be moving out soon." He nodded slowly, drying his hands on a towel. "A few more days." I leaned against the counter, my heart thudding. It's been nice having you here. His eyes met mine. It's been more than that. The words hung in the air like steam from the sink, warm, heavy, impossible to ignore. I took a breath, unsure of what I was about to say until it came out. I don't know what to do with all of this. Jake stepped a little closer, not enough to touch, but enough that I could feel his presence. You don't have to do anything, Rachel. I meant what I said. I'm not here to make trouble, but I also won't pretend that this, whatever this is, hasn't meant something to me. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. It meant something to me too. We stood in silence, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound between us, and then he did something unexpected again. He smiled. Not a flirtatious smile, not a smug or self-assured one. Just a warm, kind smile that said, "It's okay. I see you. I still respect you." That night, I went up to my studio, the room I had once used to paint, long forgotten until Jake encouraged me to return. I pulled out a fresh canvas. I didn't know what I was painting until I was halfway through it. It was a woman, half in shadow, half in light, standing at the edge of something vast. The ocean, maybe, or a wide open sky. Her hair was tousled by wind, her shoulders bare, her expression unreadable. Strong, uncertain, alive. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally painting myself. The next morning, Jake was already dressed, his bags packed by the front door. I walked downstairs slowly, taking in the sight with a strange tightness in my chest. "So, this is it," I said, trying to sound lighter than I felt. He turned to me, hands in his pockets. "For now." We stood there for a moment, two people on opposite ends of something undefined. Then he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me in a hug that said everything words couldn't. It was warm, safe, deeply personal, but it didn't ask for more. "I hope you keep painting," he said softly, his breath near my ear. "And I hope you keep choosing yourself once in a while." I nodded, unable to speak. Then he was gone. That evening, Tom came home from work and noticed the painting sitting on the easel. He stared at it for a long time. "Is this new?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied. He looked at the woman in the painting, the wind, the light, the quiet strength, and then looked back at me. "You should do more of these. It's really good." I smiled. "Thanks." It wasn't a grand revelation. He didn't suddenly see me the way Jake had. But maybe, just maybe, he'd started to notice. And for now, that was enough. 3 weeks had passed since Jake left. The house had returned to its usual rhythm, steady, predictable, a little too quiet. Tom and I moved through our days like we always had. Coffee in the mornings, groceries on Saturdays, Sunday dinners with the kids when they were free. From the outside, nothing had changed. But inside me, everything had. Jake's absence wasn't a hole. It was a spark, a reminder, not of something he had done, but of something he'd awakened. He hadn't tried to take anything from me. He hadn't pushed boundaries. If anything, he'd held up a mirror and gently asked me to look. And I had. I started painting again, regularly this time. Tom would sometimes poke his head into the studio while I worked, ask about the colors or the subject. He didn't always understand what I was creating, but he showed interest. A quiet, respectful kind. One night, while we were doing dishes, he reached for my hand, unexpectedly, and said, "You seem different lately. Happier, calmer." I didn't know how to respond at first. "I think I'm just remembering who I am," I said. He looked at me for a long time. I'd like to know that woman better. It wasn't poetry, but it was something. We took a weekend trip not long after, just the two of us. We stayed at a little bed and breakfast near the coast where the wind was salty and the waves spoke a language older than memory. One morning, while Tom was still sleeping, I walked alone to the edge of a cliff that overlooked the sea. I stood there for a long while, the wind tugging at my sweater, the sun soft on my face. I thought of Jake, not with longing, but with gratitude. He had come into my life at a time when I didn't even realize how lost I was, and without asking for anything in return, he'd left me with something precious. Permission to feel, to remember, to want more. On the last night of our trip, Tom and I sat by the fireplace, sharing a bottle of wine we'd picked up from